Okay, guys, welcome back here. Remember, as I told you, I was not going to be here today. What? All right, already checked in here, but I wanted to make sure and cover everything thoroughly here with today here on this Friday. Okay, had doc's appointment, all that good stuff. I think I told you. If you don't remember, surprise, remember that. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about is I want to open up with just an intro of one of my favorite short 4 or 5 minute little video here. That basically ties all the stuff I've been talking about. Talking about removing that one little instrumental little card, i.e. example. I was talking about the card pyramid and ecosystems and how all the food chains and food webs and all the interacting parts of science are connected, and some little things is not a little thing, and getting you to really look in the full perspective of everything. This video is a great little icebreaker for that purpose, to see that. All right, and this gives you a nice little informational narrative of what's going on. So for a couple of you, what I normally do joke around here, obviously it's taped and live, is okay. Obviously you should be able to see, I know there's that little tiny glare, that it's okay. But don't be scared of the wolves howling here. But we're gonna watch this for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we're gonna talk about it, okay? All right, so please pay attention. I hope you're logged in and ready to watch this. It's really good. It's one of my favorite things. Okay, don't be scared. Really, don't be scared. Yeah.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which
Just another name
starts
for
at the
food
top
chain,
of the
food web.
food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes. And as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed. More pools formed. More riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transform not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Wait, wake up. All right, so that can't say it any better right there as to see my examples of the little things in nature are not a little thing, all right? How everything was kind of summed up, and you got to see one small part reintroduced back, like some other facts. Like it had been prior to this in 1999, 70 years there had not been any wolves in Yellowstone, and this big imbalance in ecosystems, which includes all living and non-living things. And as I've stated, the obvious, when you take the apex predator out of an ecosystem, it doesn't take long, maybe not, for it then to slowly erode and go unnoticed, and all of a sudden, bang, all at once, you have this major issue or problem, okay? But you saw how, if you leave nature alone, and if you take, put back in a key factor in that, how quickly nature will reset itself and balance itself out. So it's one of the things we've learned so much here in the 21st century, that we understand that we have to coexist in that sense of balancing it out and not having one without the other, and realizing as we ever expanding into all territories and locations and urbanization, meaning cities and roads and this and that, we have to have a comfortable balance of, because we need these things. And removing one cog or one small piece, or like I always refer to that card in that food chain, food web, trophic cascade web, has a greater effect than a lot of times we think about. We don't factor in possibly that hub being the wolf, but all those other little spokes. And I guarantee when this started, the thing was reintroduced in the North American wolf to help with controlling that, all these other departments, and oh my gosh, look how much ecologically it changed the landscape and everything, and rejuvenated Yellowstone, okay? So hopefully you were able to really take something out of that, and really, more importantly, see the things that I've been trying to get apart to you and so on. And that was just simply exactly this. I hypothesized based, which I've been talking about, and showing you that, if this is back, we truly believe this will reset itself. But as we notice a lot of times with hypothesis-based science, lots of other things unfold with it, all right? Just so many, it was a positive snowball rolling down, the environmental hill. And it was essential for that. So I wanted to show you this, how quickly we view in this digital world, with a nice little background music and beautiful pictures of animals and a nice English accented person in a 4 to 5 minute interview, really hopefully grasp your attention, okay? Unfortunately, a lot of times it takes something that to grab the masses, as opposed to when you try and talk about logic in science and the factual part of it, that sometimes it takes time. And a lot of times in today's time and era, we want to react to the first things we see, or we want to assume that this is the first thing that's causing that, or we want to predict that if we do this, well, we know this can happen, but you don't. And that's where science is so important, okay? And you've seen, and here we are a handful of decades later, from 95, 2005, 2015, here we are 25 years later, and this, is just remarkable, how the importance of it quickly reset itself, how nature, just give it a chance, it'll bounce back. That whole Darwinistic approach of natural selection and survival of the fittest, and establishing fitness, survive and reproduce. So, which leads me to the last little slide here, into the activity, and kind of showing how that was a cool visual thing. But same thing here. We talked about discovery based, but in a hypothesis based, it's always about those predictions. So one of my favorite ones is the last little slide here, which shows the king snake, coral snake. Okay, so addressing the concept of mimicry. Mimicry obviously is something, we have two animals, one very dangerous or, predatory or just vibrant, vigorous, whatever, and you got that one that parallel looks just like it or acts like whatever, that basically rides the coattails of it in its same community, niche, whatever, and helps let it establish fitness because it appears to be something else it's not. Camouflage, mimicry, okay? So in this particular case, they were wondering in areas they saw the coral snake, which is a very venomous snake, right? Why there were no king snakes there as well. So some of you are probably going, well, I don't really understand what both of them are. Well, by setting up this simple experiment, let me give you an idea what it looked like. Bang, all right, this is a coral snake. You ever heard the saying, red on yellow will kill a fellow, okay? All right, red on yellow will kill a fellow. This is one of the most venomous snakes in North America. And this is the king snake. Harmless, harmless, harmless. But I promise you, if you're sitting there and you got red on black, you're okay, Jack, or there's some versions of that. I personally, if I'm in nature and I do this, which snake is dangerous? And most of you are going, I don't care, it's a snake, it looks bad, red, black, fella, I don't care, get away from me like that. Well, that's its whole process, and this is the poisonous one, all right? So what they wanted to see in this hypothesis-based testing memory, does the coral snake and the king snake coexist together because of the instinctual or learned behavior of predators in those different ecosystems? So what they did, which was really interesting, real simple. How do we test that? Well, a lot of things are observation. So what they did is, what this picture is, they didn't want to copy the models. These are models like out of clay. This is a rod, and this is actually a brown fake snake that had been hit by a predator and tore up. So that's why it's all kind of distorted. It's like a clay and it had been attacked. This is one of the samples of the markings. Notice it's not true red on black or black on yellow type, the coral thing. So they took, the reddish, orange, black, white. Very vibrant, and you're in a greenish, natural, earth tone colors, this thing sticks out really good. And if I'm Mr. Predator flying along or thing, and and if you see something out of the ordinary, it's going to draw your attention, and bright, colorful things a lot of times tells other predators in certain ecosystems, hey, I don't have to hide, I can stick out because go ahead, try me, I'm bad news. So what they wanted to see was, okay, if there's a direct and confirm that yes, they think mimicry is a big part with a lot of organisms, specifically with the king snake and this coral snake. So here's the data they came up with. Here's this cool graph. So basically it confirmed their conclusions were spot on with that mimicry played a big part. So if you look at this first graph right here, it shows, and it simply says that 80 in the area where there were no coral snakes, okay? So if I'm Johnny Predator, whatever going along, you got these very bold-faced colors sticking out. Well, of those models where they put them all out in the random ecosystem where they were or were not, then they go and they check them and they record which ones were damaged, okay, over a period of time, okay? And this was the data. 83% of the models that were this bright colors were tore up from predators in an ecosystem where there's no coral snakes, the poison snake. And only 17% of the ones that blended in were tore up, okay? So then they said, let's go to the other one and look at the opposite, where the dangerous coral snakes are at, completely flip-flopped. Only a little over, almost 1.5 out of 10 were disturbed, and 84% of the other ones that are earth tone were tore apart. So this confirmed that yes, probably the predators, what would you think? The predators in this area, whatever they might be, all right, were obvious, understood that, hey, this is not something I want to mess with, no different than Pavlov's law. Ring the bell, give the dog some food, ring the bell, give the dog some food, ring the bell. You don't give food, the dog starts salivating. Learn behavior, instinctual behavior, okay? So what's another experiment you can come up with out of this, which is so good about hypothesis-based? You have all these different spokes on the wheel, just like you saw with the wolf example in Yellowstone. Well, how about saying, okay, the 16% that hit this, maybe we set up trail cams and we see of those ones that did it, were they the normal predators in that area, apex predators? Were they rogue encounters? Were the individuals that attacked, were they juveniles? Were they young, not knowing experience, young and inexperienced? Were they old and disordered? Who knows? But those are something you could factor in too. They could go parallel along with that old fitness and survival and the strong of the herd and survival of the fittest. So there's so many things you can take from this mimicry and test other, questionable or hypotheses that could come out of this and just observe and collect the data. So this is what's so cool about this experiment, which this one that I like. Okay, so great example from this and just covering those simple slides, and then that's done with the PowerPoint. Okay, so to give yourself a chance to take a break here, I'm going to cut this video, and then you're going to watch the short me talking again about the exercises you're going to do today, and then at the end of that lecture I explain it. Since it's got fresh in your mind, the first simple video of the wolves. I have a shorter video you would have watched if I was in class. I'd have brought you back at the end of class, that 15 minutes or whatever after you do the work, and you would have watched the 5-minute video of one of the scientists that in 1994 was introduced, and you get to see a little more of the factual and more of the logical thinking and some of the parameters. And that video was made in 2007, only 10, 12 years after the introduction, and it's a really good different perspective from the cool first video that we'll talk about too. Okay, so I'm going to stop this one, right? So obviously you watched the thing and it led right into this explanation. Now the next video is going to reference to watch video 2 for today on this Friday. We'll explain the exercises we're doing today, and then I'll play that little 5-minute video as if it would be at the end of normal class, and then we'll conclude with that, and you guys will be done, okay? And then you'll watch out for bears, 10 and 2, wear your seatbelts, all that good stuff, okay? So I'm going to stop this video and make a second one. All right, but first I'm going to go downstairs.